When is a coincidence not just a coincidence? When someone disappears without a trace, it's considered a tragedy. But when it happens again and again, all under eerily similar circumstances with a group of people working on the same classified programs, it certainly raises eyebrows and makes people wonder if all these cases are connected. In recent months, a lot of people across social media have begun connecting the dots between a string of as many as 15 members of the scientific community who have either died or completely vanished under mysterious circumstances ever since 2022. This conspiracy theory has quickly spread from TikTok videos to a congressional inquiry. Today, most mainstream news organizations claim that there is nothing to see here, and that all these deaths and disappearances are nothing but coincidences and clickbait. The rumor mill most recently went into overdrive after the death of the well-known UFO researcher David Wilcock, who was reported to have taken his own life in April of this year. Police ruled out foul play in the man's death, but there remain plenty of skeptics who believe that Wilcock was just the latest victim in a growing conspiracy. But what do all the people on this list have in common? And what secrets did they have that someone might want to go to any lengths to keep quiet? Between 2022 to 2026, as many as 15 American scientists, researchers, and other government officials have turned up either dead or missing. 2 of them were gunned down right by their front doors. 5 of them just walked out of their homes and vanished without a trace. One of these people was a 68-year-old retiree named William Neil McCasland, who left his home on foot in Albuquerque, New Mexico on February 27, 2026. Sometime between 10 and 11 a.m. His wife had left him at home a little earlier that morning, so she wasn't there to see him go. McCasland left without taking his phone, his Apple Watch, or even his glasses with him. But one thing he did take was a .38 caliber revolver. But where the man went from there? No one knows. The Bernalillo Sheriff's Department soon issued a silver alert. This is sort of like an amber alert, but meant for the elderly. The thing about McCasland, though, is that he wasn't just any retiree. He was a retired Air Force Major General who served in senior Pentagon roles involving nuclear science, space research, and top-secret defense initiatives. McCasland graduated from the Air Force Academy in 1979 with a degree in astronomical engineering. He later went on to earn his doctorate from MIT. His PhD supervisor back then was the man who designed the guidance system for the Apollo program. McCasland spent his military career entrenched in some of the government's most secret space and nuclear research programs. At one point in his career, he served in director-level positions at the Pentagon, working alongside the National Reconnaissance Office, the agency in charge of the nation's spy satellites. But perhaps most notable of all was McCasland's last posting as commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. And if you know anything about UFO lore, then you're probably familiar with Wright-Patterson. This base was the home of Project Blue Book, the Air Force's official investigation into flying saucers. On top of that, legend has it, Wright-Patterson was also the location where the wreckage from the 1947 Roswell crash was taken to. For 2 years, William McCasland ran a multi-billion-dollar top-secret research lab at Wright-Patterson. After he retired in 2013, he went into the private sector, becoming director of technology at a defense research firm in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was during this time that he gained a reputation as a UFO whistleblower. McCasland's name appeared in the WikiLeaks dump of Hillary Clinton's campaign manager John Podesta's emails. In one of those emails, former Blink-182 singer Tom DeLonge identified McCasland as his insider source into alien technology. It was Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy that pushed the Pentagon to release the now famous TikTok videos of naval pilots encountering unidentified aerial phenomena in 2017. Since then, there has been a major shift in the public conversation about UFOs. What was once confined to fringe conspiracy theories is now being openly discussed in congressional hearings and even the White House. Just 6 days before William McCasland went missing, President Donald Trump publicly announced that he was directing the Pentagon and federal agencies to begin releasing government records related to UFOs. McCasland's disappearance has certainly raised some red flags based on the sensitive government work he was involved in. But when you hear about some of the other cases of strange deaths and disappearances, many of whom were people who once worked directly for Major General McCasland, then you really have to start to wonder if there is something more going on. About 8 months before McCasland's disappearance on June 22, 2025, another scientist named Monica Jacinto Reza went hiking in the Los Angeles National Forest. The 60-year-old Reza was an avid hiker who McGuff had hiked her way through the mountains around L.A. She planned on summiting Mount Waterman in the Angeles National Forest. On that day, she set out on her hike with 2 companions early in the morning. One of those hikers couldn't keep up and dropped out early. Monica and her other companion kept going. They reached the summit at about 8:15 a.m. Monica's companion took several photos of her that morning. The last time the other hiker saw Reza, she was only about 30 feet behind and waving at him. Then the next time he turned around to look at her, she was gone. A massive search and rescue operation was quickly launched, including canine units, drones, and helicopters. They even ran aerial photographs through a computer matching system, hoping to detect pixel images of Monica's red shirt against the landscape. It's not just the strange circumstances surrounding Monica Reza's disappearance that raises questions, though, but rather who she was. It turns out that Monica Reza was a technical fellow at Aerojet Rocketdyne, a U.S. government contractor involved in advanced space research. Reza was one of the co-inventors of a nickel-based superalloy called Mondalloy. In fact, the Mon in Mondalloy was short for Monica. Mondalloy was engineered to withstand extreme temperatures in an oxygen-rich environment. The U.S. government needed Mondalloy to develop their own rocket engines so that they could stop relying on Russian-made engines. After Aerojet Rocketdyne sold to another defense contractor in 2023, Reza went on from there to work for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. What's especially curious about this is that the Mondalloy research program was overseen by the Air Force Research Laboratory Program. And who was director of that program? None other than William McCasland. Just 4 days after Monica Reza disappeared, another woman went missing. This was a 53-year-old administrative assistant at Los Alamos National Lab named Melissa Cassius. Los Alamos is one of the most sensitive nuclear research facilities in the country. It's the place where the atomic bomb used on Hiroshima was developed. Cassius's role at Los Alamos gave her access to a great deal of sensitive nuclear research data. On June 26, 2025, after Cassius dropped lunch off for her daughter at work, she told other members of her family that she planned on working from home that day. She was last seen on surveillance footage around 2:18 p.m., walking alone along State Road 518. Cassius left her keys, car, wallet, purse, and 2 cell phones at home before heading out on foot. In addition, both cell phones had been factory reset, wiping their memories of all data. A few months later, police recovered a pair of shoes inside New Mexico's Carson National Forest that matched the pair Cassius was last seen wearing. This made 3 people missing within 8 months of each other, all of whom were connected to some extremely sensitive American defense programs. Despite this, it doesn't seem like any connections were made between these cases in the press. Then on December 16, 2025, a 48-year-old man named Nuno Loureiro was shot and killed in the entryway to his apartment building near Boston. Loureiro was a 47-year-old physicist and director of MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center. In January 2025, just a few months before his death, President Biden presented Loureiro with the Presidential Early Career Award, the highest honor given to young scientists. Loureiro's work was focused on plasma physics and energy research. It turns out the gunman who shot Loureiro was a former classmate of his who went to the same university in Portugal. The gunman's name was Claudio Neves Valente, and he was let go from his teaching position in the year 2000, the same year that Loureiro graduated. He was also identified as a suspect in a mass shooting at Brown University a couple days earlier, where he killed 2 students and wounded 9 others before escaping. We don't know the man's motives for any of these shootings, nor why he specifically sought out Loureiro to kill him. And we never will. That's because he died later that same night from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. 8 weeks later, on February 16, 2026, another shooting death occurred. This was a 67-year-old man named Carl Grillmeyer, who was shot to death on his front porch. Grillmeyer was an astrophysicist at Caltech's Infrared Science and Data Center, and he was widely praised in his field. He was part of a team that discovered water on distant exoplanets. In June of 2023, he was the lead researcher on a breakthrough that could help detect life on other worlds. More recently, he began working on the NEO Surveyor, a space telescope designed to detect asteroids. Initially, the motive for Grillmeyer's murder was described in the press as a carjacking. What's particularly strange about this is that Grillmeyer had moved to a remote desert town called Llano, California. His home was basically in the middle of nowhere. Police soon arrested a 29-year-old man named Freddie Snyder for the man's murder. Snyder lived just 2 miles away from Grillmeyer, who reported him for trespassing on his property on December 20th. Snyder was arrested on a weapons charge, but he was released 3 days later. 2 months later, he gunned Carl Grillmeyer down on his front porch. Yet another case of a mysterious death that has been connected to the other scientists is that of a 45-year-old man from Massachusetts named Jason Thomas. He was an assistant director of chemical biology for Novartis, one of the largest pharmaceutical manufacturers in the world. On December 12, 2025, he and his wife came home from having dinner with friends. Then, after they took care of their dogs, Jason told his wife that he was going out for a walk. He headed out into the night without his phone or his wallet. 3 months later, on March 17, 2026, his body was found after the spring thaw began on Lake Quannapoat, a few miles from where he was last seen. No cause of death has ever been released publicly, and the list of strange deaths and disappearances just keeps growing from there. William McCasland once oversaw a nuclear research program at Los Alamos National Laboratory, which also ties him to another scientist who disappeared. This was 78-year-old Anthony Chavez, a retired research and development engineer who, like McCasland himself, was also last seen walking away on foot from his home on May 8th. He left behind his wallet, keys, and even his car. 3 months after Chavez's disappearance, another government contractor, 48-year-old Stephen Garcia, also left his Albuquerque home on foot. Like McCasland and Chavez, Garcia left behind his wallet, phone, and keys. He also took his handgun with him. Unlike the others, though, Garcia wasn't actually a scientist. He worked as a property custodian at the Kansas City National Security Campus, where he held a top security clearance. Another name on the list is Michael David Hicks. He was a 59-year-old scientist at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, studying near-Earth asteroids and comets. He died from unknown causes in 2023. Frank Maywald was a 61-year-old German-born researcher at JPL. He died on July 4, 2024. And like Michael Hicks, his cause of death was never revealed publicly either. Joshua LeBlanc was a nuclear engineer working on advanced aerospace propulsion systems. On July 22, 2025, he drove away from his home in his Tesla, leaving his phone and wallet behind at his house. He then drove to the Huntsville, Alabama airport, where he sat in the parking lot for 4 hours. His family would later state that LeBlanc had never informed them that he was planning on traveling anywhere. The next thing we know is after that, his Tesla crashed into a tree off an Alabama road, causing a massive explosion. The fire left his charred remains unrecognizable. He was only identified several days later by a forensics lab. Recently, one more name was added to the list of missing and dead scientists. But unlike all the others, this one actually warned several people beforehand that she thought that there were people out to get her. This was 34-year-old Amy Eskridge. She was the president and co-founder of the Institute of Exotic Science in Huntsville, Alabama. Amy's work was largely focused on gravity modification and gravitational propulsion. According to police, Amy Eskridge took her own life by a self-inflicted gunshot wound on June 11, 2022, which would actually make her the first in the string of strange deaths and disappearances. But in the days leading up to her death, Amy had been telling friends and family members that she was being threatened, and that if she turned up dead, to not believe it was suicide. Just 1 month before her death, Amy sent a text message stating that she would never kill herself. Eskridge made a lot of unusual claims in the days leading up to her death, including that she believed her phone and email were being hacked. She said that she was being followed, and that she was certain there had been intruders in her home. She also believed that she was being targeted by an unknown energy weapon that sounds an awful lot like a targeted microwave weapon. In fact, Amy's ex-boyfriend said that one time when they were curled up on the couch with a bowl of popcorn, the unpopped kernels began popping all by themselves in the bowl. Videos surfaced online showing Amy's hands covered in what appears to be reddish burns. I've talked about directed microwave energy weapons before in my episode about the Havana Syndrome. But at the time, the official government line was that such a device didn't exist. Although in recent months, new reports have come out claiming that such portable microwave weapons have begun turning up on the Russian black market. But Amy Eskridge had a lot more to say about what was really going on than just threats against her. Amy's father, Richard Eskridge, was a retired NASA engineer whose work involved advanced propulsion systems. She claimed that she and her father were just the latest in a long line of scientists to have cracked the secrets of anti-gravity. Amy gave a lengthy 2020 video interview in which she explains how she was going public with what she knew in order to make it more difficult to murder her later. She thought that if she went public, it would be more difficult for the people who were after her to make her death look like an accident or suicide. Amy claimed that not only was anti-gravity technology theoretically possible, it was very real. She also made the shocking claim that aliens were real and that it turns out they weren't extraterrestrials at all. They were actually something she referred to as ultra-terrestrials. This was a term coined by physicist Hal Puthoff, who played a key role in the U.S. government's Stargate program into psychic research and astral projection. According to Amy Eskridge, these ultra-terrestrials weren't actually aliens from another planet. Rather, they were us. Amy said that these ultra-terrestrials were distant descendants of human beings that she called the P-47s and P-52s. The P in each of those names stands for present. She said the P-47s came from 47,000 years in the future, while the P-52s were from 52,000 years in the future, both of whom are coming back to our present because of an impending apocalypse that would drive some survivors to live in underground bunkers, while a few stragglers remained alive on the Earth's surface. Amy said that there were two competing factions of these ultra-terrestrials: the ones who wanted to prevent this impending apocalypse, and the ones who wanted to make sure that it happened. If you watch the videos of Amy Eskridge, it's clear that she's under some extreme stress. Some people interpret this as her suffering from some sort of manic delusional episode. But one of the other leading theories involving some of these missing and deceased scientists also has some terrifying connections to what Amy Eskridge claimed. Some people have connected the dots between the backgrounds of many of these scientists, in particular their study of distant planets and other objects in space. Some people believe this conspiracy all has to do with an enormous asteroid named Apophis that is scheduled to pass close by to Earth on April 13th, 2029. According to NASA, Apophis will miss Earth by about 20,000 miles, which sounds like a lot, but in truth, it's actually lower than many of our own satellites. NASA insists that Apophis's current trajectory will cause it to miss Earth. But keep in mind, for it to not hit us, the asteroid needs to avoid a gravitational pocket known as the keyhole. If anything were to slightly alter Apophis's trajectory, like, say, it bumps into another space rock, then it could divert its current path and get caught in the Earth's gravitational pull, which would cause it to be pulled back into a collision course with the planet on its return trip in 2036. There is even a possibility that the sun's rays could affect Apophis's trajectory. This is something called the Yarkovsky effect, in which photons can alter the course of objects in space. One theory goes that Carl Grillmeyer and some of the other missing scientists became aware that Apophis was going to hit Earth, and that the shadow government eliminated them in order to prevent a public panic. If Apophis were to strike Earth, the effects would be devastating. Apophis is roughly 1,500 feet long. That's a little longer than the Empire State Building. If the asteroid were to strike land, it would release an explosion 100,000 times more powerful than the object that flattened Tunguska in 1908. Thousands of square acres would be vaporized in an instant. The resulting dust clouds would blot out the sun, and its effects would be felt worldwide for many years as crops die and global temperatures plummet. Although considering the Earth is 2/3 water, it's more likely Apophis would hit the ocean, which would result in devastating tsunamis with waves of water hundreds of feet high. Entire coastlines would be washed away. Think about it. If there were such a major catastrophe on the horizon, and the world's elites knew about it, they would have a vested interest in keeping it a secret for as long as possible. Otherwise, people would stop going to work, stop paying their taxes. The global economy would collapse if everyone knew the world as we knew it was about to end. But the official narrative remains that Apophis is going to miss us. You'd also think that a secret of that magnitude would be impossible to hide. There are a lot of scientists studying asteroids in space around the world. Of course, some of those same people are now either dead or missing. There is another theory about the missing scientists that doesn't involve some global apocalypse. Rather, some people believe it has to do with a group of powerful people who would go to any lengths to prevent the research many of these people were doing from coming out. Remember, Amy Eskridge and several of the others were all involved in advanced propulsion and energy research. Throughout history, there have been many scientists and tinkerers who have dug too deeply into alternative energy sources, who later turned up dead. One of the most well-known stories involves Stanley Meyer. Back in the 1990s, Meyer became famous for inventing a car that didn't run on gasoline. Instead, it was fueled by plain old tap water. Meyer's engine used a process known as electrolysis, which is a method that's been around since the 19th century to split water molecules into its component oxygen and hydrogen atoms. But up until Stanley Meyer came around, the electrolysis process always took too much energy to be used for practical purposes. But Meyer allowed his water car to be examined by several engineers and scientists, who for the most part came away baffled but begrudgingly admitting that somehow this thing worked. Meyer claimed that his water car could drive from coast to coast across the United States on only 22 gallons of water. Today, most mainstream scientists who have studied Stanley Meyer's patent insist that his engine can't possibly have worked, because it violates both the first and second laws of thermodynamics. But people close to Meyer also say that he fudged the numbers on his patent to avoid having his invention stolen. Then on March 20th, 1998, Stanley Meyer was having breakfast at a restaurant with his brother and a group of investors when he suddenly stood up and exclaimed, "They poisoned me." He rushed out of the restaurant and died on the sidewalk out front. Officially, Stanley Meyer died of an aneurysm, but even the coroner who wrote that report later expressed some skepticism. But what does Stanley Meyer have to do with all this? Well, one thing that's less well known about him is that prior to developing his water-powered engine, Meyer experimented with other alternative energy sources, and his really big invention may have come before his water-powered car. Meyer reportedly invented an energy device in his garage that didn't run on water. In fact, it didn't run on anything at all. Zero-point energy is the theoretical energy source that binds the universe together. In 1955, physicist Willis Lamb won the Nobel Prize for discovering that electrons and hydrogen atoms were being affected by some other invisible force within the vacuum of space. The idea of this invisible energy source has been theorized for centuries. During the late 19th century, scientists referred to this invisible energy source as the ether. Nikola Tesla believed it was possible to tap into this invisible power source and provide free energy to everyone in the world. After Tesla died, the FBI seized all his scientific documents and classified them. Mainstream science insists that free energy isn't possible. But think about what would happen to society if such an energy source were proven to be real. The entire global economy is based around fossil fuels. If zero-point energy could be harnessed and made readily available, then the entire world would change overnight. There are a lot of incredibly wealthy and powerful people who would go to any lengths to prevent this from happening. Meyer isn't the only inventor who ever claimed to have harnessed the power of zero-point energy. Floyd Sweet was a retired General Electric engineer who was affectionately nicknamed Sparky. After he retired in the 1980s, he kept experimenting with alternative energy sources. He developed a device he called a vacuum triode amplifier, or VTA. This was a small box about the size of a deck of cards that he claimed could generate more than 220,000 watts of power. Sparky demonstrated this device on video by powering a variety of high-powered lights, but Sparky claimed this wasn't even close to the limit of what his device could do. The energy Sparky was tapping into was literally limitless. You could use it to power your house, an entire city, even the entire world. Not only that, but according to a retired nuclear physicist named Tom Bearden, who witnessed Sparky's invention in action, his device could even cause objects to defy gravity. But there's a problem. Practically as soon as Sparky filed a patent for his VTA, strange things began to happen. He and his wife began receiving threatening phone calls dozens of times a day. They were followed constantly by mysterious men in suits. One day, 2 of these men came to the house to speak to Sparky. An hour later, he collapsed. Sparky's wife phoned for an ambulance, but when the ambulance drivers got there, they wouldn't let her ride along with them to the hospital. Soon after that, she received a phone call saying Sparky was dead. Later on, the FBI showed up and confiscated all of Sparky's scientific equipment. It turns out anti-gravity isn't just the stuff of science fiction. We know that scientists have been experimenting with anti-gravity technology at least since the 1950s. Perhaps not coincidentally, in 1951, a new patent law was passed in the United States named the Invention Secrecy Act. This was a law that allows the government to suppress disclosure of certain inventions that threaten national security. This law covers a broad range of reasons what might cause such inventions to be declared top secret. One of the things the law states is that any energy invention that's more than 20% efficient is to be immediately declared secret. At the same time, the U.S. government continues to fund research into advanced energy systems through government contractors like Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Dr. Ning Li was just such a researcher who started her own anti-gravity research company named AC Gravity. During the 1990s, she published several research papers about anti-gravity that caught the attention of the U.S. government. In 2001, she received a $400,000 grant from the Department of Defense into anti-gravity. Then, something strange happened. That's because Dr. Ning Li vanished. There were lots of theories about where she went. Some people thought that she had been murdered to prevent her from revealing what she knew about anti-gravity. Others thought that she went back to China to work for their government. Still others thought the DoD was keeping her prisoner. But then 13 years later, Ning Li suddenly reappeared. She never gave an explanation where she was all those years, and she never got the chance to either. That's because Ning Li was struck by a car. She suffered permanent brain damage after that. She died of Alzheimer's disease in 2021. But Ning Li isn't even the only Chinese scientist connected to the list of the missing and dead either. Recently, some news reports out of China have claimed that 9 of their scientists have gone missing as well. And at the time of this recording, the latest name that's been added to this list is David Wilcock. He was a paranormal researcher who published multiple books and was known for his appearances on ancient aliens, among other things. On April 20th, 2026, Wilcock reportedly took his own life. Although some people who knew him say that Wilcock was someone else who claimed that if he died under mysterious circumstances, to not believe that he killed himself. But at the same time, some skeptics have pointed out that Wilcock was depressed from a recent divorce and suffering from financial troubles. In fact, other skeptics have poked holes in the entire conspiracy theory surrounding the missing scientists. Where some people are seeing connections, most mainstream news organizations say the entire story of the missing scientists is nothing but a case of apophenia. That's the very human condition for people to make connections between events even if there is nothing really there. Although a cause of death was never revealed from Michael David Hicks. Some sources claim that he died of heart disease. Amy Eskridge's own father denies that there was anything unusual about his daughter's death and that she was simply a troubled woman who took her own life. Melissa Cassius and Stephen Garcia don't really fit the others either because they weren't actually scientists, and it's questionable how much secret knowledge they would have possessed. Cassius's daughter reported that her mother suffered some personal problems, and that she may have been trying to run away to escape them. At the same time, other family members have pointed out that Cassius was planning on taking care of her sick mother after an upcoming surgery. Jason Thomas was a scientist, but he doesn't exactly fit the others either. That's because he was a biologist, not a specialist in space and energy like most of the others. He was also distraught over the death of both his parents. Monica Reyes' disappearance is weird, but there were actually a couple of clues found. The day after Monica vanished, a beanie that belonged to her was discovered inside a ravine about 600 feet away from where she was last seen. Scent dogs searched the ravine, but they were unable to pick up any trace of her. Although later that afternoon, 2 hikers in the area reported hearing what they said sounded like a woman yelling. They directed searchers to a location about 1,600 feet away from Monica's last known location. But again, no trace of her was found. And this didn't explain why, if Monica was that close by, she didn't just respond to searchers calling out her name. It's also possible the sound of screaming the hikers heard was just a coyote. As for William McCasland, his own wife claimed that he didn't possess any special knowledge of UFOs, and that he was beginning to exhibit signs of brain fog. She said that on more than one occasion that he told her he didn't want to live like that. There is one more theory that's been proposed about what's going on, and it actually relates to a popular novel and Netflix series called The Three-Body Problem. This is a best-selling science fiction novel by the author Liu Cixin. The plot involves an alien race from a distant star system who begins killing off Earth scientists who threaten their invasion plot. According to Amy Eskridge, these ultra-terrestrials were taking steps to ensure an impending apocalypse, while others think that perhaps aliens are killing off scientists who get too close to the truth. This is one of the reasons why it's been suggested that David Wilcock had to die. It's also why yet another name has been added to the list of missing scientists. A former U.S. Air Force intelligence officer named Matthew Sullivan. In 2023, a former intelligence officer named David Grush testified before a congressional committee and made some pretty wild claims that the U.S. government was hiding secrets about UFOs and alien technology. Matthew Sullivan was also scheduled to testify before the committee about what he knew of UFOs, but he never got the chance to testify. That's because on May 12, 2024, Sullivan died of a drug overdose from combining multiple medications. Officially, Sullivan's death was ruled an accident. So is there a vast conspiracy to eliminate scientists going on? Truth is, I don't think any of us know for sure. There are a lot of skeptics out there in the mainstream news who ridicule anyone who even suggests that such a thing is possible. The Atlantic magazine called the missing scientist story unbelievably dumb, but that's always been the go-to move for people who discuss controversial topics. They label them a conspiracy theorist and dismiss them as kooks. It doesn't mean that all conspiracy theories are real, but it's also really disrespectful to simply dismiss people who are asking legitimate questions about things they don't understand. At the same time, there are grieving families out there right now still searching for answers about their lost loved ones. When I tell stories like these, I like to present as many facts as I can, and I let my audience decide for themselves what to believe. But what do you think is going on? Let me know your thoughts, because I'd like to keep an eye on this topic. It seems like every day new information is revealed. And if you want to hear some more about some other conspiracy theories, then check out the video on the screen right now. Thanks again!